Today's guest on the Keen Yoga podcast is Mark Darby, back again. Thanks for coming on, Darby.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's nice to see you again.
I know, it's been some years, and as I always say, Mark was Darby, we call him Darby, was my teacher. And for good or for bad, I'm sure he wouldn't hand his hand up and say he agrees with everything I do.
I just can't wait to see you in person again and watch you practice and give you some hints.
Give me some help. I know.
Well,
but, the one person that managed to get through to me a little, and I am where I am. If I'm any good as a teacher today, that it's all due to Darby's influence, really, and his technical skills, and also the way that he can just cut through and say things just so clearly, so concisely. I mean, to wax lyrical, but there's no one that I owe more to than yourself. So thanks for coming on again.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see you.
Words.
Yeah, well, as I say, I really owe everything to you. So I appreciate you so much.
So come and see me again.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's the fear, isn't it? That's the fear. Yeah.
You've evolved in your teachings and practice. I've evolved as well. So my teachings
I hope so.
Have developed better.
Yeah, and yours as well, which I hope we'll get into now. But before that, I suppose I need to ask you a little bit about, for those listeners that don't know you, that don't know your history, you had this incredible time with Patabhi Joyce in the 1980s or 70s even, I think, in Mysore.
1999 I started. We stayed. Basically, we went back to Australia for 1 year and we left in 84. So it was 4 or 5 years practicing with Pattabhi Joyce every day. Except when we went to America. So,
which is a crazy background of this experience that you had. I remember, you told me many things, but the fact that you were in the room often just with him and you sometimes.
No, never with him and me. It was him, me and Joanne.
Right. But,
so as long as Joanne was there, he would have the separate class for us. If she was having a menstruation, then I would join the Indian class.
Really?
But he couldn't bring Joanne into the class of men.
Right. And they never mentioned that to me before. What was the Indian class like then?
It was health club. As Indians coming into practice, they'd stop and talk gossip, talk politics, and talk about eating doses and all sorts of stuff. They were working out, but it wasn't the same intensity as what us Westerners were doing. Us serious, those that really came in from the West were really serious, and the Indians was just a practice to keep healthy. For most of them, so there was one or two that were more skilled, but most of us came in to work out. They go into a health club. So.
I think that's a question that often people ask is like, how was Patabhi Jois teaching before the Westerners came? Because obviously part of this evolution of Ashtanga is suited to the intensity that the Westerners brought to it. And that's what I understood. And yeah.
They definitely changed it. They definitely changed his approach to teaching. Maybe not for the best, from what I understand in my head from looking back, and understanding what he was teaching in the beginning. He was teaching much more to do with the Bandhas. And I know that he was teaching Nancy Gulgoff that way.
And you as well?
But then, right? No, I was already too late. I was 3 or 4 years later than that. But the influence came. There's a few influences that I believe it came about by the change was the Western approach, which was not yoga, really. It was more stretching. Probably the teachers were teaching yoga were coming from the fitness area, dancers, fitness, gymnasts, and they were the ones coming in to teach yoga because they could see there was money being made teaching yoga and they could make a living, but they didn't have the foundation of the Indian practice, which is Krishnamacharya and Pattabhi Joyce. When you look at photos of them in their practice, their photos, and other older yogis, Vishnu Devananda, you see their bodies are rounded, really much working with the Dantian. And the Western approach was stretching forward, stretching and lengthening. And so even though I believe Pattabhi Joyce may have started from the teacher's feeling of a bandha. Too many students were coming stretching, and he just said, "Okay, you do," and continued to do that. Another person I blame for the approach of Westerners, some big name, and I may shock a few people by saying this, is Iyengar, BKS Iyengar. You know, the book Light on Yoga, and you know, he influenced me because that was the Bible. You know, and I was looking at postures, and I'm looking at him doing the postures. So his forward bends have very different to Pattabhi Joyce. They were very flat, and you know, really he was into more extension. Well, it looked that way anyway. I don't know. He may have been working with Bandha, but it didn't really look like it. His belly was popping out. But he was more into, you know, stretching. It seemed to be stretching. And that's what I looked at photos of him, copied him. And it's only years and years later that I realized, or I appreciated what Krishnamacharya looked like and what Pattabhi Joyce looked like. You know, I basically fooled myself and said, "Oh, they weren't flexible. You know, what are they doing? Silly." But when I started to get an understanding, a much more understanding of the meridians or the nadis, and the approach of fascia and tensegrity, and these things coming from Thomas Myers, anatomy trains, and his take on anatomy and the flow of chi, or the flow of prana. And then you realize, hey, these guys were doing something really powerful. And so that's what changed my approach to the practice and changed my approach to teaching.
So by the time that you arrived at Patabhi Joyce, you were being taught that kind of extension, kind of stretching, and you went, and you went along with it. Yeah.
Come into a room and you look at everybody else and they're stretching. You do the same thing. So, you know, there's one thing that I teach in my classes is I never have people wrap around.
Grab the wrist,
hold, I just say, take hold of the feet. Which Pattabhi Joyce says in Yogamala. He
hold
says,
the foot.
Satta, inhale, lengthen, lift the waist, lift the anus. Exhale, reach down, take hold of the feet. So he says, take hold of the feet. He didn't say wrap around.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Read it. It says,
right. There's a few details there.
Right. Yeah. One thing you should read is Paschimottanasana. Paschimottanasana has the secret to the whole vinyasa. Because he talks about Dandasana. Comes in, Satta, inhale, come to sitting position, sit with straight legs, hands on the floor. Inhale, lift the waist, lift the anus. Exhale, so then describes Dandasana, and then says, this is the seventh position of Paschimottanasana. So he described Dandasana as the seventh position. And then in Paschimottanasana, which is the only one, but he says, Ashto, and he actually says, Ashto, exhale. Bend forward, take hold of the toes. Then he says, talks about inhaling. Inhale, bend, lift the anus, lift the waist, and then exhale, then fall forward. So it's really telling Joseph, she's saying, hold your bandhas, hold your bandha. If you're going to hold the bandha, it's impossible to take the chest forward. It has to lift over. And one of the things Krishnamacharya talks about in forward bends is he says, bend above the waist. Forward bends begin above the waist. So the waist is here, it's above the waist you go forward, not from the waist. So there's a few little things that
that's
have been written by these.
That's a fantastic detail. Yeah. I never thought that with Krishnamacharya. Yeah. There's no argument with that detail. Yeah. And how to forward fold.
But then again, the Western approach is this, and people
why do you think that is? Why do you think that Pattabhi Jois converted his teaching, and then Iyengar obviously also when he went to the West, we assume that he converted his teaching to that audience at that time.
I don't know. I don't know about Iyengar. Iyengar had some brilliant. I'm not saying that he was bad. Iyengar has brilliant things. I used to work with the Iyengar alignment, who was one of the first. I took a workshop with Richard Freeman, and he talked about alignment. And that was the first time I'd heard about alignment in the Shanga. This was in 2000 or 1999 or something like that. And it was like, we can have alignment in Ashtanga, because in my days where always Iyengar was there, Iyengar people don't like Ashtangis and Ashtangis don't like Iyengar people, and two different approaches, which, I understand. Iyengar was very straight. Everybody was like holy postures, and Ashtangis were just moving and jumping around, and ideally working with our breathing. And the Iyengar people weren't really concerned about breathing. They were more alignment. So there was that difference. I mean, he talked about combining them, and that was a big change in my practice, because I was actually hurting myself. And so I started to work with this. In fact, I worked with a Iyengar teacher, Hart Laser, and we worked together. He'd come and do workshops, and I'd teach the Ashtanga, and he would teach the Iyengar approach to the Ashtanga method, which kind of got a little bit strange at times. Because he was like more worried blocks and stuff. I mean, sometimes in Mysore classes, people would get blocks and blankets, and so it got a little mess up.
There are some ways where you might overlap or contradict, but yeah, I mean, this idea that you can't bring alignment to Ashtanga practice is just a silly. Of course you can. It's a silly idea, but I'm glad it's going out now. I mean, to that end, one thing we didn't discuss is when you went to Mysore at 1979 to 83 or 4, and then you had that intense period of practice, and you experienced, a fairly early Patabhi Jois teaching. And then what people might not know, which is an interesting detail I always think about your Ashtanga history, is you then went back and you started teaching in that way for a while, and then you kind of stopped teaching for quite a chunk of, and then refound it again later.
I taught in Australia. So when I went to Australia for about 1 year, Guruji would give me his blessings to teach. I had no experience of teaching. All I had was practice. My practice from him. And any teaching skills I had was the adjustments that he gave me. Okay, so when I went to Australia started to teach, that's the adjustments I gave. It's like, it just didn't work. It's like, when I was getting taught by Pattabhi Joyce, we did our class. We practiced in the morning, and my practice was ending up 3.5 hours a day practice. But then the rest of the day was recovery. So the next day's practice. So I didn't have to do anything else. We just went home, rested, ate food, rested, and we got ready for the next day's practice. And so when I was teaching these people in Adelaide, Australia, they were coming in the afternoon, they'd worked all day. And I gave that same adjustments. It was a total mess. It didn't work. So, went back to India, then we went to Montreal, and I wasn't good. Teaching was like, I just knew it didn't work. I didn't feel comfortable teaching. And probably also, at that period, at 84, there was very little yoga around. It wasn't popular. So then I just had to work, and I worked so many years, basically stopped practicing.
Were you injured by Pattabhi Jois? Was that one reason you stopped?
No. Oh no, the practice. I just same thing. I was working. In fact, I had a job that was a big commitment. I was working for my brother-in-law, and I was working sometimes 12 hours a day. So it wasn't an 8-hour-a-day job. It was always more. I was given, brother-in-law was the president, so I was always promoted, so more responsibility. So I just ran out of time, played golf, went snowboarding, things like that. So, but then circumstances happened that that job finished, and I said, okay. And that was at a stage where I always realized I'd missed the practice. It was always there, but this was in fact, I had a phone call from a guy that who did a podcast with Shandor Rametti. So I met him in Adelaide. In fact, I took over his class in Adelaide. He went to see Iyengar and said, look after my class. 30 students. 1 month later, 4. So that was my teaching. So, and then I did a bit more teaching. I only had 3 or 4 students, 5 maybe at the most. So he phoned me. He got hold of me. And I don't know how he found me, but we were talking and he said, how's your practice? I said, well, I'm not practicing anymore. He said, what a shame, you had such a beautiful practice. And it was like, it's just, it's like, and I'd already been thinking about how can I get into yoga? And then circumstances happened, things just happened, and I changed. And I lost my job. My brother-in-law had a fight with the owner and they split. So all the family got fired. So that was me out of a job. The next day I started practicing again. It was like, and then a few months later started to teach.
So it's partly down to Sandor that you got back into it. I didn't know that.
And the seed was already there. He just sort of added water to it. His thing just added the water, and I just sprouted from that to really want to do it. And then the other circumstances happened. It was like, oh, what am I doing, Shiva? I know I asked for this, but I was wrong. Please, please let me get back to yoga. And it happened. And the thing is, now yoga was popular. It's a big difference. In 84, nobody was doing yoga. This is 1998, and now everybody's doing yoga, and everybody's doing Ashtanga. And I'm suddenly the man, because I've been to Mysore. I've studied with Pattabhi Joyce. I knew the series.
So you had like a 15-year break, roughly.
Yeah, you reckon? Yeah, so 14, something like that, 12, 14 years.
And didn't do no yoga at all, didn't do anything?
A little bit. Joanne was still practicing a bit. She had children to look after kids. She was working.
And what age were you when you got back into it, when you started again?
48 or something, close to 50 again.
Incredible. That I always find amazing that you'd given it so much of a break and come back at that age, which is not young. I'm fast approaching that age. And you got back in. How long did it take you to get up to a level again, to the level that you were? Let's say
I never got to the level I was.
Oh, really? Never got back to that.
I got to a level, a very advanced level. We're still doing advanced series, going into advanced, but by then the system had changed. So there was very slow to get postures. So when we went to Mysore, it was very, you got one posture a month. Whereas before we were getting 2 postures a week. So big difference. So
it's what I wanted to ask you, how was it in the room when you first went to Patabhi Joyce? And I mean, I remember you telling me this story, if I get it correctly, that you had a vinyasa you made up yourself where you'd go into a handstand and flip over and back over. And he tolerated that, because it's funny for people to hear these.
No.
He didn't tolerate it. He didn't like it. I thought he allowed you to do it.
No. There was things he let us get away with, but handstanding for sure. Another son of the handstand was there all the time. A lot more handstands, things like that were accepted. But this thing I did in Australia was Iyengar saying you did arm balance and went to a back bend after arm balance. So I said, okay, let me try that. So I did arm balance, went to a back bend, and I realized, what am I doing in a back bend? I'm going to get back to chaturanga. So then I flipped back up and came down to chaturanga. So then, that's a nice vinyasa. And I'd become so strong from the 2 years in Mysore plus the practice I was doing again. And so I was just lifting up from posture, inhale, lift up the hands. I could even go up straight legs to handstand from Paschimottanasana. And then back bend, flip back to handstand, chaturanga up the top. So when I went back to Mysore, here I am ready to show Pattabhi Joyce, look what I've learned. So he let me do it one day. Second day he watched, and third day said, you don't do anymore. So
he gave you 2 days.
He gave me 2 days. And I was like, come on. I love doing that. So, but it probably it was going to ruin my back for sure.
Probably a good idea in the end. Yeah, but any other changes that you would say, because you went later to Mysore again and practiced with Sharat a lot. Well, how different was it between practicing in those days and then when you went from 98 to Sharat and Patabhi?
It's a very big difference in what the approach was. There was the breath. First we were doing 8 breaths in a posture. I switched to 5 because I was doing full vinyasa. So I was doing full vinyasa. And so that was only 5 breaths. But when I went back, those postures like Ubaya Padangusthasana, where we used to spend the breaths on our back, we spend 8 breaths on the back or 5 breaths on the back, roll up and sit for another 5 breaths. Well, that was now exhale 1 breath, come up. And Uvamukha Paschimottanasana was the same. So that was, that was something.
Mandy still teaches the 5 going back.
Yeah, well, that's original. Well, you look at, if you don't know, Yoga Makaranda, look for those postures, Pattabhi Joyce and Urdhva Mukha Paschimottanasana. All of it is on his back. None of it is sitting. So he's got 4 positions of Urdhva Mukha Paschimottanasana, all on his back, none of them sitting. So that really is the posture, not to roll up.
Not the rolling
up.
So, yeah.
And it's a shame because when you look at the sequencing, we're talking about sequencing, progressing to the next postures. So, this is another big thing, but and remember, I started as a beginner. I didn't know anything from Pattabhi Jois, so he taught me from the beginning. So we didn't learn shoulder stance, and we didn't learn head stance until we'd finished primary series. And so we didn't learn Utthita Hasta Padangusthasana, Ardha Baddha Padottanasana. We never learned those until we finished primary series, which, makes sense. And if you look at Yoga Mala, those, they are in there, but, the reverse triangle is not there. Reverse Parsvakonasana is not there in Yoga Mala. So they weren't there.
Is that the way you would teach? So I have headstand and shoulder stand after the whole primary?
After, and the twisted standing postures were not there. They were added. In fact, he never gave them to us. I did what other people do. I was watching other people, and he said, "Give me that posture," but everybody's doing it. So I just snuck it in. And he didn't say anything, so he just kept doing it. But he never really gave it to me. And because it's not a beginner's posture. But now again, these things happen, but people learn. And I was watching Cliff Barber teach a beginner. And this was in Crete, when he was living in Crete in the forest, and people would just pop out of it. Anyway, I don't know where they were living. They were all living in the forest, and in the morning,
in the jungle. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't jungle. I wouldn't say it was jungle. This is jungle. That was more a forest. And they would come down, and there was this place just filled with plants, and you'd find a spot to put your mat, and they'd just come in and practice. And this one, people heard about it. They'd come and see Cliff, and he would teach them. And this one girl came, and he just put your mat there, do what I'm doing. So she just copied what he was doing. So if he was doing whatever postures he was doing, she was doing. So she never learnt that, this twisting posture is not for beginners. He taught it to her anyway. So I believe a lot of the early teachings were done like that. The people were watching an advanced practitioner and say, "Oh, I'm going to do that." It wasn't really taught. And then the people have learned from other people, if they were taught that way, then they wouldn't know about this reverse triangle not being part of primary series.
Yeah, right. You go as far as to say it's not part of primary, the reverse postures.
It's not part of primary. No, not really. It is now, but it was never part for beginners to do for primary series.
So there were kind of like levels or templates, like this is your primary, and then next stage, this is your primary as you advance. And would you teach that now? I mean, is there an argument for putting headstand and shoulder stand in after everyone's done primary series? Do you think that's dangerous to put them early, perhaps?
It's a bit dangerous. Look at, I was talking about Ubhaya Padangusthasana, Supta Konasana, all these postures work on the shoulders. You're leaning back on your shoulders. So you're developing shoulder strength. Ubhaya Padangusthasana on your shoulders, like I said, 5 breaths. So this is developing the strength in the shoulders first. Doing Utthita Supta Padangusthasana, this one. So we learned that on the floor before we did it standing up. Ardha Baddha we learned in primary series, then in the end we did it standing up. So it just made sense for imagine a beginner trying to stand up on one leg and take the other leg out.
Before you've done it on the ground. The same with Ardha Baddha with the half lotus. I mean, it makes more sense to learn it on the ground before standing up. Why did you think that they changed that around then?
Because people were just coming in and doing it. And you come to Mysore, having learnt the practice in America or wherever, and then coming to Mysore, they've already learnt those postures. So instead of Pattabhi Jois saying, "I don't do it," okay, you do. Maybe he said the first student don't do. Hey, no, you don't do. By the time the third one came along, okay, you do. Which is, a funny thing about Indians, which I've understood, but they don't tell you anything. They tell you once or they don't say anything. And, you ask, If you ask them a question, they'll answer you. But if you don't ask, they don't answer. So you've got to ask. And it's not, and I wasn't one to ask. In fact, I was just taking it all in, as the questions weren't coming out. I was just soaking whatever was given to me. It's years later that I have all these questions, and it's too late. So I have a lot of questions. But I did ask Pattabhi Joyce, where do you look in Paschimottanasana? And he looked at me and said, you look down. So I wasn't looking at the toes, look down. So
where did the toes come from?
I believe the toes come from here. If you think about it, you're not mistaken. I'm here, inhale. So this is kind of trinning. We're doing trinning in each of the postures. We come down, sapta, exhale, reach, inhale. So here, now, if we're going to do a forward bend, and this works in a forward, this is how a forward bend works, is the eyes move first. If you move your eyes first, then you automatically connect to your bandhas. So if you lifted the waist, you lifted the bandhas, then exhale. Look at the toes. Then continue to go down. So the initial movement.
Right, so the initial instruction is the toes.
Toes, and then that's the way I teach it anyway. If you look, and that's lowering the eyes, and that movement, the eyes going forward and down, is a connection to the rest of the body to follow. It's amazing thing. So that's how I see the toes. But
it's unfortunate some people are just so reluctant to let go of that instruction of looking at the toes, so the head, the neck is up, and in the forward fold. This just looks uncomfortable. It doesn't really make sense.
Get an understanding of anatomy, trains connective tissue and meridians, and you won't do that because it doesn't work. You get this, understanding how the chi flows. Even if you're looking at bandhas, if you have a head like this, you don't have bandha, you don't have Uddiyana bandha. You have,
you throw the head
maybe
like
you have
that.
a bandha, maybe you have a bandha up in the sternum, but you don't have the bandha in the lower Dantian, or in the lower area, in the khanda, which is the Swadhisthana chakra. You don't have it there, it pops out. So if you want to maintain the bandha in the Swadhisthana chakra, hold it in, you cannot do this because it doesn't hold, it pulls out.
Well, you're talking about bandhas. It was something I was going to approach a little bit later, but would you like to give a basic idea of, or your understanding of the bandhas, rather than when people generally take them as locks to simply pull the stomach in and pull on the anus? How would you say the same, or would you describe it differently?
So I understand the word that Patabhi Joyce is using, and other people I just really can't remember who it was, but they say contract. Contract, that's Pattabhi Joyce's words, and the best example is David Life, 1994 Yoga Journal, had an interview, and he was talking about him being in Uprastiti, lifting up, and Pattabhi Joyce said, contact Uranus, and he's going, what if he's asked me to talk to him about planets, and what he's asked me to look at the planets for, thinking I've been just done 3 hours, 2 hours practice, and you realize he's saying contract Uranus. And so contract is different to squeeze. Squeezing is pulling the buttocks together. Contracting is lifting. And if you want that lift, that's abundance. It's simple to get. It's pretty, the thing about bandha, it's not that complicated. It's pretty simple. The only time you need to have it tight and more held is when you're doing kumbhaka. So any other time, there's breath. There's breath, and breath means movement. So you've got to allow the breath to flow. And if you contract too much, if you really pull it in, then that's what happens. You can't fall, you can't breathe.
Yeah.
But if it's a gentle lifting, and simply all I do when I teach is just have people lift up, lower down, lift, lower, try to lift. And as soon as they try to lift, you get taller. The foundation has become stronger. If you're in Padmasana, will have the inner rotation, and the sitting bones are spreading out, then automatically the anus contracts. And that's bandha. That's all it is. And you have the lower dantian. The thing is to keep it. And so if you're going to keep it and bend forward, you're not going to be able to take the chest forward because you'll lose it.
And that's something that people will know in your teachings if they met you, but if they don't, how would you describe this lower and upper dantian that you talk about in terms of bandha?
That
where is it, and how do they?
I don't think you can talk about it. It's it's something you've got to feel. And my greatest approach is saying it's simple. Just get taller. and it automatically happens. And that's all it is. And if you try to make it stronger than that, you'll mess it up. So that's what happens. People think, and people go, well, what's Bandha? I don't know what it is. And they, it's lithium, squeeze, let's squeeze really hard. And I've got to squeeze hard. If you squeeze hard, you've messed it up. It's got to come from inside. It's got to come from your connection to the earth and the connection of all your connective tissue lifting, and it automatically happens.
So, we also talk about Bandha as a spot higher up than the navel, right? You talk about a spot kind of closer to the front ribs.
Okay, so you've got Uddiyana Bandha. So you've got Mula Bandha, which is the pelvic floor. That comes from stretching the pelvic floor, which is in a rotation. Admithana is automatically happening. And then the lifting or the contraction and lifting up. And it'll automatically lift. And because the buttocks are stretched, it's going to create a tension to pull up. The pulling up mechanism is again inside. So this is Uddiyana Bandha. So Uddiyana Bandha starts at the Tanda or Swadhisthana chakra, one hand swept below the navel. One hand, which means the thumb to the finger. And that area there is
that low. Huh.
That low. That's the beginning of Uddiyana Bandha. Then it draws back and lifts and comes all the way up to the diaphragm, pretty much. It comes up to the diaphragm. And that action of drawing it in is what's putting pressure on the diaphragm. So that's what the control of the breathing is coming from the diaphragm. It puts pressure on the diaphragm and then you control the breath. There's no bandha or no Uddiyana Bandha, then the diaphragm hasn't got resistance and then it just pops down and the belly pops out. So, so that's really in big area. A lot of people just use the upper part. So when you use just the upper part and pull in, then you can feel my voice and my breathing becomes very different. And, when you hear people breathing really, doing the yoga practice, that's all coming from the upper tightness in the upper belly, the upper part of the Uddiyana. But if you keep the lower part...
And that should be soft. That upper part should be soft.
It changes.
Right.
There's a difference between an inhalation and an exhalation. So there's a reverse. So the inhalation is soft, and then you breathe in, and then you need to control it. It's not holding it tight, it's just controlling it for the exhalation. And then it changes to the end of the exhalation, and you let it switch. Top of inhalation, you hold the top and let it go down. If you read, not sure, somewhere in Hatha Yoga, I'm trying to remember exactly where, but he says you hold Uddiyana after Kumbhaka. So after Kumbhaka, after inhalation Kumbhaka, hold Uddiyana Bandha as you exhale. So you're holding the top of it. So it's a good approach to kind of imagine. Inhale. Exhale.
Fear that people will not get to understand this on the podcast, but basically,
it's something. It's not something to be understood on a
contact Darby's teaching, and you'll get an idea of his understanding of Bandha. I mean, what you have said, it's not a kind of lock. It's subtler than a kind of gross.
The lock is, as I said, the lock is there with Kumbhaka. Then you go, and then you bring Jalandhara Bandha into it. It's a lock. And then you just lift it up more and don't let it move. But there's no movement. There's no movement in your breathing. There's no movement in your anatomy. It's still. And then you can start working just moving prana around. So now you're working to just trying to feel energy move. So that's where the lock is. And if you look at Jalandhara Bandha, people have a hard time doing it. One of the hardest things I have to teach is Jalandhara Bandha. It's so simple, but so, people get any tension. And people have a hard time. Jalandhara Bandha. Going in and it's locking, but it's just low chin. And then, the chest is already lifted, and then you press. And there's the difference between lowering the head is that lowering the head, you can still breathe, still talk. It's just bending the head, and you've just maybe
within practice. Do you teach Jalandhara Bandha? I mean, I remember David Williams saying that he used to be taught to hold Jalandhara Bandha throughout the practice. That these days it's only holding the last posture. Would you say? I mean, you talk about the neck a lot and the position of the neck and keeping the chin in.
Jalandhara Bandha is only there in Kumbhaka. Only Kumbhaka. You can't have Jalandhara Bandha and breathe because there's not a lock. It's not going to allow you. But if you exhale and you feel just lowering the head, it's here I can talk, but now it just really blocks. And a lot of that has to do with the hyoid bone. You know, the hyoid bone here. That needs to float. That floats back. And that's what pulls back and locks the throat. So, you know, when you eat food and you swallow, you can't breathe. Because if your throat's open, you're going to put food in there, you're going to cough it up or whatever. So the hyoid bone pulls a membrane across the pipe, the windpipe, so you can't breathe. Food won't go in. So when we're doing Jalandhara Bandha, lifting first thing is, so you just pull that across, the windpipe's blocked. And then you're basically blocking, you know, the idea is you're breathing in, you're breathing, you fill your whole body with prana, with chi and blood and oxygen coming up into the head. And then Jalandhara Bandha with Kumbhaka, and all that energy that's in the head cannot move it, and it just penetrates, moves around in the brain.
Sounds like you're talking about something more subtle than simply the methodology of Ashtanga Yoga. What would you say Hatha Yoga means to you then, the manipulation of energy in the body? Now, I know it's a big question, but it seems like you're talking in that way. How would you describe what we're doing in terms of the action of the diaphragm and bandha?
Hatha Yoga, I think it's the same thing. I would work both with the same approach. You know, once you understand this method of working with the connective tissue in the body lines, which is the meridians, the lines of prana, when you understand these, you're not going to change your approach for whatever yoga, it's all the same. Yeah.
So you could do this within the Ashtanga Yoga practice.
Well, it is. This practice is, you know, it's all to do with like reaching and lengthening and connecting muscles. So, you know, this reaching my body follows. And what a lot of people do is they push, and then it blocks the flow of chi. But if you keep the chi lines open, it's going to connect all the way down to your toes. So that's the approach I'm using. It's not, you know, there's something like 650 muscles in the body, apparently. I work it as one muscle. So every muscle is going to, if I reach my fingers out and extend, every muscle that I need to activate in that line is going to activate by itself.
Whole body connection.
And it's all good.
But what about the idea of energy or pressure in the body? You're talking about it, like pressure in the head and circulating the prana in the body and use of the diaphragm to kind of block prana at a certain level. I mean, there is something deeper going on, isn't there?
Well, the breathing technique that we use in Ashtanga Ujjayi breathing. They talk about constriction of the throat, Hatha Yoga Pradipika. But as soon as you connect to the khandha, the lower area of the Swadhisthana chain, just draw it in, automatically it connects to the throat is restricted. Then the movement of breath is from the heart. So it's a very smooth breath, not rushed, not hard. It's a soft, deep, long breathing.
How could the movement of breath be from the heart? Not literally, metaphorically.
The sound is coming from the heart.
The sound is coming from the centre of the body. Yeah.
The centre is coming up through the windpipe, creating that sound. So it's not just in the throat, it's coming from down here. So that whole... Remember... They don't have one. But, you know, those things you have underneath the sink, we have plastic ones in Costa Rica, and they're kind of like an accordion, but you open up and they bend. So
right. Yeah,
basically, that's all we have. We have this thing, if we looked at it, there'd be a thing in our mouth, a tube going down into our lungs. This tube goes down, and that's all it is, the tube, and we breathe. And that, if it's open, air will go in, air will go out. Simple as that. But the mechanism for breathing is the diaphragm. So the diaphragm goes down, air comes in, creates the pressure for air to come in. The diaphragm goes up and forces air out. So that's really all we need. We don't need our chest muscles. We don't need all this muscle around here to breathe. It will work. It'll activate as necessary. But if you start manipulating the chest to breathe in, it's very strong. It's some people you see breathe just in the nose, the whole nose goes. And breathing there makes and it shows up when you're doing pranayama and you're asked to do long breaths. Trust a long inhale and a long exhale. Generally I start with an 8 count for a breath in and an 8 count for a breath out, and then we build up to 20. So the idea is 20 seconds inhale, 20 seconds exhale. The Ashtanga practice I use when I'm teaching is 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 4, exhale. So I basically am counting that as I'm teaching. And the idea is that every movement, the vinyasa movement, and the breathing connect. And it's difficult to do, and a lot of people don't want to do it. They just want to do yoga postures.
And I know you said that the technique of Hatha Yoga is basically universal to all types of yoga, but what are the characteristics of Ashtanga Yoga particularly, if you could say what makes it Ashtanga Yoga and what do you like about that method? Because obviously this is your method that you're well versed in.
It's the breath, vinyasa. Movement
the emphasis on the breath and the vinyasa. And what does vinyasa mean for you?
Movement with the breath.
The breath is making the movement, or the breath and the movement go together?
They go together. They coordinate together. So you don't suddenly go inhale, up dog, punch it, inhale, and wait for shat to go down. You take that, that's the rhythm. That should be a 4 count, or 5 count, 6 count. It was a very interesting interview that Patabhi Joyce did. He was giving asking a demonstration, and it was in France. It was about 1994 or something.
I remember that. Yeah.
So he's talking about breathing. He says, 10-second inhale, 10-second exhale. And another place says, 10-second inhale, 10-second exhale, 15-second inhale, 15-second exhale. So what he's saying is
in practice, in asana practice.
Asana practice 10 seconds.
No, he definitely didn't teach like that in Mysore, though, did he?
No, definitely not. No. Right. This is the funny thing about this interview. Even though he said that, then he had a few students there. I think Lena Miel was there, and I don't know the other ones. But suddenly he goes, "Hey, come away," and everybody just and down. Just after he's talked about doing a 10-second inhale, it was quite hilarious to see. But he does talk about it. Krishnamacharya also talks about breathing, even breathing. So breath, inhalation, exhalation, same length. Desikachar was the son of Krishnamacharya. He did a workshop, and his thing was movement. Inhale, the breath, as long as the hands are lifting, you breathe. If the breath stops, you stop moving. And he would do things like inhale, stop, continue the inhale, stop, continue the inhale, stop. So he was very much into teaching this rhythm of moving with the breath. And it's a very hard thing to do. It's not that hard. It's just that you've got to put the effort in. You've got to say, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to breathe this way, which is what I did when I decided to. I said, I'm going to breathe this way.
I think there's something to do with tension in the diaphragm, like physical, emotional tension in the diaphragm. And you don't want to move it. You feel a sense of people talk about a sense of restriction in the breath, so they can't breathe. And that's
so where they breathe. Usually that's from up here. Can't breathe. That's where okay. So when I talk about alignment, so how I'm talking breathing, one of the key places I work and get there. See what we can do here. Is basically here. This is your midpoint. It says xiphoid process. So this point
around the sternum,
in actual fact, is the connecting point from the fingers. All the connective tissue comes. Some part of it is going to end up here, and from the feet. So they all come up. So the connection between the hands and the feet move through this point. So if I'm moving from there to here, then my body semi-connect. If I'm moving from my shoulder, it doesn't reach there. There's no connection anywhere else. So this point here has a lot to do with breathing. If it's that far, just that much forward, it changes the action from coming from the lower point, the Swadhisthana chakra, to the upper point. So it's that minute difference. just sitting with the chest slightly forward, and you breathe here. Keep it in the right position, and the breath will come from the lower area, and that is Ujjayi breathing. And this is just what people would hear a lot of sound and call it Ujjayi breathing, but it's not really.
So do you think the greatest locus of awareness maybe in the practice might be to that xiphoid process spot?
That's one of the, the point that I work in there. Number one is, I give 7 steps for meditation. And the first one is foundation. And it doesn't come from me. It comes from the Dalai Lama talking about meditation. And he says, you need foundation. Some foundation, you align your spine. So the alignment of the spine is allowing the chi to flow, the Shushumna to open, and allow you to be able to breathe. The next one is the shoulders. So shoulders is a huge place to worry about. Shoulders. And so now you get the shoulders. The next is the head. So once you get the shoulders in position, the head can be balanced. Then it's only a smile. Sweet smile. Just a this gentle smile. And if you look at photos of Krishnamacharya, he's always got this little smile. And that will soften your eyes. And in your eyes means your face and your body are relaxed. If your eyes are soft, that means you're in a relaxed state. Stira Sukhamasana. And then he said, now you can breathe. Now you have this 6 steps. You've created a position in which the body can breathe. Now you can breathe. Now you can meditate. So without those things, you won't be able to get your meditation. So,
sorry to go back to a more practical point, but people are always going to want to know how were you taught to breathe by Pattabhi Jois? Were you taught 8 breaths or 10 breaths in an asana? 8 breaths in an asana. And did he teach you? Did he say anything about the breathing to you? Did he give any hints or tips?
Breathe, inhale,
just breathe.
Remember, he didn't speak English.
Ujjayi breath to you? Or?
No, never mentioned it. Never mentioned Bandhas. Never mentioned breath.
Right, okay.
Never mentioned Bandhas. Just
so you kind of picked it up from each other in a certain sense.
I think we just did the practice. The thing he did tell me was if I stop, jump back. So I learned not to stop. Right. And that was a way that we never stopped breathing. Again, here's one of the greatest influences I had about breath was a guy called Brad Ramsey. And not pretty much unknown person, but he was, I think, one of the first people to be authorized by Patabhi Joyce to teach. And he was one of the stiffest practitioners I've ever met. His back bend was like bent legs, bent arms, and a tabletop. Because his back bend, his leg behind the head was with a headband. And he was in 3rd and 4th series. But arm balance and his breathing was just all his movement, his arm balance was just inhale up, over leg, extend out, 5 deep breaths, come back down, other side, come up, breath never changed. And that's something from his practice that really stuck with me. And then Patabhi Joyce saying, hey, jump back whenever I stopped. And we just learned, don't stop, just keep breathing, keep moving. And, practicing every day, you get strong and you can do it. So,
can everyone do all things? Because there's this narrative that practice, and you can, like everyone could be like you, or everyone could be like John Scott. But I think you often say that there's a certain anatomical gift or luck that you have than your ability and other practitioners share. Yeah,
I was just lucky. I'm lucky. As my body, I was blessed from the universe to have a strange body that could do those things, but not everybody has that. So it's not for everybody. I believe Sharatans realised that, and he brought in that. It was just before he died. He was just bringing that new book, the Active series. So that was kind of like a really good thing that he did too. But he came to acknowledge that not everybody has this ability to do the Ashtanga practice. So we've got to.
So if someone's struggling, say, in a Marichalsana D or a leg behind the head, would you allow them to do more of the series and just get them?
Sure. Pattabhi Joyce never stopped people.
Pattabhi Joyce, if they couldn't do
he would assist them. He would come and help the best he could, but then they moved on.
Then they move on. Right. And I think that's a fundamental detail. Yeah.
Yeah. But there was always, like I'll teach.
Got lost in the last few years.
if I'm teaching a Mysore, when I have my Mysore classes, and even here, I don't let people miss postures. They have to do everything they're doing in the series, in sequence. But they don't have to, they can do an alternative to the posture they can't do. Try to teach Chinese people to do Supta Kurmasana, and, their bodies are just not anatomically gifted to cross the feet and bring the arms behind the back. They don't have long arms, they don't have long legs, so it's not possible. And in fact, if you look at Pattabhi Joyce and Krishnamacharya doing Supta Kurmasana, their feet are here.
Yeah, in front of the head.
In front of the head.
Yeah.
Which is the actual posture. The reason we do it behind the here is as a preparation for intermediate. So that's why you're doing that in primary. But in primary, it's not meant to be there. It's meant to be in front.
It seemed like some details got kind of increased as people... you were talking about competing against each other in Mysore or making things harder for yourself. Right?
I've thought about competing, but things, again, for me, it became supermarket yoga. When I was there, like I said, sometimes just Joanne and myself in Mysore practicing. And then we went back in 2000, the room that we fought, the cell, the Lakshmi Puram Shala held 8 people. Crowded, 8 people. When I went back, 2012 people were in the same space. So it was people practicing on 2 different height mats. The arms were one higher than the other. And plus, the stairs were full of people waiting to come in. So, and then there was no finishing postures done in the show. They went upstairs. So they never taught people finishing postures. People just went upstairs and did them. One of my pet peeves or worst things that I think happened was having to stand up from a back bend. That was one of the worst things I think they brought up to start intermediate.
Right.
You want to do intermediate,
and you weren't taught
stand up
that.
from a... I didn't learn Uttradandra Center until I was doing 3rd series, and drop backs much later. So that was,
Well, had it been broken up, or did you just do primary straight into intermediate and then the 3 postures
no,
of
we
closing?
did primary. I stayed there 3 months. My first session was 3 months, and then my body was, I needed a break. And so I left for a month and then came back, and then 2 months later I learned intermediate. So what happened was that Joanne didn't leave, and when I came back, he quickly had me catch up to what Joanne was doing. So we were always the same postures. Then I had an injury. I pulled a ligament in my knee and was in a bad state, and Guruji wouldn't let me leave until I was healed. So I stayed 5 months, and then I left for another month, and then came back. And then we just continued and started learning advanced. So we're doing primary, intermediate, and advanced every day. So that was pretty...
All in a row?
3.5 hours, 3.5 practice. Yeah, 3.5 hours practice. And Joanne put an extra hour in because she would spend 1 hour on the head.
And then he taught you the back bend after the advanced, or when did it go in?
No, it's during
originally for students generally.
Well, don't forget, we were with him the whole time. We never learnt and went somewhere else, except for the time we went in Australia. But the first 2 years, we never went anywhere else. So here were just primary series, intermediate, advanced. And the advanced series was a little different. Actually, it was quite different. But those are different. And in fact, the advanced series that Pattabhi Joyce gave me and Joanne was different to anybody else. And when Joanne got pregnant, then I got my own special series. And she got her special series because she was pregnant. So it's a few things that changed.
Why did you get the special series? Just because Joanne was pregnant? So you were doing the same thing. So he gave her a series and he just gave you the same one.
He gave her different one.
Right.
And he gave me arm balance. So I was walking around the shower on my arms, walking between the mats, and doing the always one arm handstands and things like that, which I loved. So.
Is that because you completed the advanced series and you got your own series?
No, the advanced series was different. He gave David Williams an advanced series, which he's got a sheet with it. I think there's another one that Brad Ramsey was teaching as well. So it was a little different for different people. It was more individual as you got to advance. And then as the people started coming, then it became more rigid. It's, this is what it is. This is what it is.
Right.
So,
never heard that before.
And then they made it.
Yes, they changed it again.
And then you had to stand up from a back bend before you could do intermediate. And that was kind of like, then you had to do drop backs before you could do intermediate, which didn't really make sense because a lot of good practitioners who weren't flexible in the back missed out on the opportunity to at least do Ustrasana, Shalabhasana, Dhanurasana, those earlier back bends, which are...
especially help the back.
I think... Well, which is necessary, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And were you taught the full vinyasa? You mentioned it earlier. Was Pattabhi Jois encouraging you to do full vinyasa, or did you put that in yourself?
It was again a group of American. Gary Lopadopa, if I remember, was one, and he said, he'd learned full vinyasa, so he was doing it.
From Pattabhi Jois?
From Pattabhi Jois. He was teaching. If you look at the 1982 videos from Maui, the Maui group, as advanced practice, I think they were doing full vinyasa there.
Right.
So it was part of the...
Before that, he wasn't? Before that, wasn't full vinyasa, or just experiment, depending on the year?
No, he didn't teach it to me. What happened, I had a cold. And I'd already seen Gary Lopadopa doing it. So I said, today I had a cold. Or maybe I did full vinyasa. No, I did primary, but full vinyasa. Oh, yeah, you do. So he was really excited to let me do it. And so then that was it. That was it. So then I did full vinyasa. Which is really good.
He wasn't generally teaching people full vinyasa.
No, it wasn't generally taught. It had to be, again, if I'm going to teach full vinyasa, one of the first things I look at is what is your chaturanga like? If you don't have chaturanga, then don't do full vinyasa because you're just going to wreck your shoulders. So you've got to first really have a strong chaturanga, good alignment, because it's repetition, even more repetition of movement, which is which is the thing that people don't like about Ashtanga is the amount of people who get injured. And a lot of the injuries are coming because we're doing repetition of movement. And if chaturanga is not good, and your shoulder alignment's out, generally your upward dog is not good, then your downward dog is not good, and it's just pushing with pressure on the shoulder joints. You're as much as Ashtanga can help your yoga practice improve in a really good way, it can also do the opposite. You can really wreck your body very quickly. So you got to.
What do you think? What do you think the commonest mistakes that students make? If you can kind of say, 3 to 5 most common things that people should look at and maybe think about in their practice that they might reassess.
Well, first is breathing. If you breathe and you're working with your breath, it's you can't hurt yourself. The breath is going to be more. It will control you. The other thing is people are trying to overstretch. They're trying to do things that their body's not capable of doing. Again, you're looking at your peer. You're looking at people who can do these things in the practice, and then you want to do them. So you kind of, a lot of people, which I did too. You ignore your body. Just keep going, and try to get that thing, no pain, no gain. Thing in Ashtanga, they said it's only a breakthrough. Well, forget that. You have pain. Your body's telling you.
An opening.
It's not an opening. Pain is pain. Your body's telling this is trauma. Just slow down, be aware. So pain is actually your best friend. Sore muscle is something different, but pain in the joints is definitely not something you want to keep doing, and people ignore it. Especially people who are starting to practice later in life, people 30, 40 years old, want to do the practice and they're getting older and their bodies are breaking down, but you still want to do what 20-year-olds are doing. So really hard to make them realize what's happening. And it usually takes a few injuries before they really wake up. I just had a couple that wanted to lift up and jump back. Don't do it. They kept doing it. And, eventually the shoulders got wrecked because they were just so out of alignment. That lifting up was putting so much pressure.
Yeah.
I did the same thing. It was actually in Colorado, and I was helping somebody out, and a rolfer came and gave me a session of rolfing and got into my psoas and said my psoas were like crystal, which means they were ready to break. And she looked at my practice and said, "Hey, don't jump back like that." So I was lifting up, floating back. I said, "Don't jump like, don't do that." I wasn't going to stop doing that. God, it looked beautiful. Oh, I love the way you jump back. And it wasn't long after that when I was working with this Iyengar teacher, and he just said, "Hey, take your tailbone down." And that little movement changed what was happening in the jump back. It wasn't all back, it wasn't all back muscle doing it. It wasn't that, it released the back, and when I started to work the core, and then the psoas were released. So the original movement was trying to get this arch back, and the psoas was going, and then straightening the legs of the psoas that was pulling. It wasn't good. So.
Yeah. I remember you giving me a similar instruction for lifting up in Trini to a straight leg jump back, and trying to figure out why I couldn't do it. And then there's a tailbone was sticking up, and the tuck of the tailbone, and then I could do it. Yeah.
Yeah, release the psoas release, and then you weren't hurting your body. Yeah. But it was just to let you know that you're not. If you're doing something, it's really hard when you're doing something you think it's good, you don't want to change. And Einstein came up with a beautiful thing. He said, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, is insanity.
Madness. Yeah.
It's a madness. So you want to change, you got to change.
Yeah. You got to do something different, but it's hard. It's hard to let go of things that you've used to do and that you like doing. I mean, that must be difficult. I wanted to ask you on that note about your own practice and letting go of things as you got older and how it's changed. I mean, this is one question that's come up with many people. I've wanted to ask you particularly about how you've developed your practice over the years and getting older, and what you've let go of and how you'd feel it.
Well, I let go of a lot of things. My practice now is, as I said, breathing. So that's the number one thing, everything I'm doing. And I've gone back to doing full vinyasa because I feel I need that to get strength, and it's not that difficult. It's just, again, getting used to doing it. And the thing about full vinyasa is you inhale, you don't raise the hands on the inhale from coming up. So you just inhale. And you get a whole breath, exhale. Then you start again. So you have that half a breath to re-establish everything. But as far as postures are concerned, with even side reaches some of the, had injuries I had. Rotator cuff injury here, had to have operation. So it really, really, really damaged. So I couldn't even lift my arm. I mean,
really?
Luckily, I found a really good doctor who fixed me up. So I still don't have full mobility compared to what I used to have. So that the twist is really difficult. So the twist has changed. So I just twist and still do it, but just the breathing. Forward bends are there. I won't do all of intermediate. I'll do different postures of intermediate. I'll throw in a few advanced. So I feel like I've, put my hours in, my years of practicing, but I can kind of let things go and just. But what I'm still doing is it's still a sequence. It's not like I'm just doing advanced, I'm going to do passion mode, kind of something and do an arm bounce and twist. So I don't start doing the intermediate until I finish what I'm going to do in primary, and I don't start doing the advanced until I finish what I'm going to do in intermediate. So I still keep that progression there.
So you don't think there's an argument then for people to open up into their own, after a number of years of practice, to open up into more freestyle, learn what their body needs and do accordingly? You're keeping more traditional to the series stuff.
I kind of feel that I do that. Like I teach, I'm very kind of like, this is the sequence, you've got to keep the sequence. And I respect that, because if you start allowing people in the class to do something different, then other people will feel that they have the rights to do something different, and the next thing you know, everybody's doing something different. Then I believe that's why Sharad became so strict.
Is there anything wrong with people doing their own thing, or is it just a teaching tool that you need?
Well, don't call it Ashtanga, that's all.
Right.
And don't do it in a Mysore class. So that's it. You can do it whatever you want at home. Do whatever you want. It's here at home. There's no police. There's no Ashtanga police at home. So you won't go to Ashtanga heaven, though. But no, it's Ashtanga. If you're teaching it and you're in the classroom, there's a particular way of doing it. You got to have that respect for it. My differences is my approach to the movement and the breathing. I really incorporate that, and so there's a few things that I do that are different to what a modern tradition is. I'm more the old tradition, what I learned from Pattabhi Joyce, and so I'm still sticking with that, and not coming into this. I'm still 8-4-5 rest on your back and Ubaya Padangusthasana. I make sure people hold the side of the feet and not wrap around. And so my technique of teaching is more to do with the connective tissue and the body, the alignment coming from that. And I'm really looking at that because people are really very subtle difference in alignment, just in the position of the shoulder, in the shoulders. The shoulders are drawn forward in a forward bend. You start leaning forward with the shoulders, it's going to block your midpoint. You won't be able to bend. Bring the shoulders back and you'll just really. So it's a lot of little things.
No, I remember that a few years ago you said to me that the subtle, like a very, very small movement makes a huge difference overall. And you don't expect it because we're not used to thinking that a very, very tiny, precise difference can make such a difference, right? That's not the way the modern world works. Yeah.
The body we have it's amazing. It's got principles, really good principles. One term I use, the body responds to the pressure you apply to it. So if I'm reaching and I go like this, the body's going to respond and everything's going to connect. Reach from here, it's going to respond. But it's not going to, it's different connections. It's going to work from here to there. Learning these key points, these trigger points for these different points where the blockages come from, is really something that I'm working on and finding out more and more as I teach. So it's pretty. You're
still developing even now. You're still learning.
All the time.
Right.
All the
really.
time.
What have you learned over the last years that you'd say is a difference to that? How you?
One thing I just learned last week.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I learned last week was one guy was. I started working with him in Montreal. I went to a Mysore class, and he was like rigid, and he couldn't bend, and his legs. I just looked at him, what? And so I just started to work with his feet, and things happened straight away. And he was suffering from fascia in the seat foot plantar fascia, really terrible. And it was because he was really tense. And then I just did a workshop last week, and he came. And, he's still there and I'm working with him, he's getting better and starting to get key points. And then he told me his mother was always telling him to lower his shoulders. Okay? And so his mother went, lower your shoulders, low. And he took it and forced them down. And so I said, let me think. So I tried it. And since I did that, all my ankle bones got tight and I couldn't move and I couldn't bend forward. And that force of taking the shoulders down pulled everything together and everything joined. So this is kind of what happens with a lot of people. They're just pushing too hard or in the wrong way.
Yeah, but also it comes from previous instructions they've been told to do, or other emotional traumas in the body.
One of the worst instructions people used to give was engage the quadricep, lift the kneecaps. Remember that one? That was very prevalent when I first started learning or started teaching, and I could hear other people where it was say, what? Now I look at you, you nuts. So it's just, even people have problem to lift up in chaturanga, and they're forcing it. They're coming down, push their hand, they push to lift up, and it's just pushing the wrist just blocks everything. So you don't push, you just lift your shoulders and let the body respond to the lifting of the shoulders. Big difference.
I think I could continue this conversation for a long time, but I'm realising we're getting out of time. Do you have any, topical question? I know that Patabhi Joyce is your main teacher, but do you have any memories of Sharat you could share? Just knowing that he's passing recently.
I didn't practice that much with Sharat. He was in the Shala. And Sharat was more of I always took Sharat as a young boy. I remember I met him when he was like 8 years old. That's when I met Sharat. And it was a very different relationship. We became uncle and aunt auntie. Joanne was auntie, I was uncle. And, we took him to the zoo. We used to give him bananas with peanut butter, which years later he told me he loved them. He used to come around to our place to see us just to give us banana and peanut butter. And, I used to babysit Gerard. So, his teachings I never could never grasp. I respected him, of course, so I would take his classes and respect him. But by that time, the practice had already changed. It was already 2000. And so the changes in the Ashtanga approach had changed. And so, I just knew it was different. But, I still had respect. He still adjusted me. I remember he went to Toronto, we went to see him, and he was like very happy that we went in. He got on a computer and was talked to Shruti and said, look who's here, Darby and Joanne. So it was a really nice relationship that we had. So
it must have been strange seeing him as a child and then growing up and becoming, the head of.
Well, I remember him coming into class the first time he used to come to practice. He was
really.
Patabhi Jois and was, hey, come in, you practice. Come in and race out, and you try and hide so you have to come in the next day you want to play. So he wasn't that interested in, it's the same as any young kid. Come in and practice your yoga, and okay, I don't want to do that, I want to play. So, but eventually, he's got some stories about what happened when we eventually started to help his father out. So, it was getting busy, so Pattabhi Jois needed help. So.
And you could say one thing to finalise, if you could say one thing to Ashtanga practitioners to take on board or that you've learned over the years, what would it be?
Breathe. Go back to the...
And the second line?
Ashtanga practitioners.
After breathing, the breathing. Oh, enjoy the practice, yeah?
Enjoy your practice, and don't... understand that it's not just a practice for physical, it's an internal practice. It's really internal. It's, you read the sutras and it's all they say is sthira sukham asana. That's what it says about asana. And if you speak to somebody who's not doing yoga asana, I say it's sitting postures. And it's very, you have to press them and say, but what happens if we are doing asana? And finally, yes, it should be the same thing, but it's a comfortable, balanced position. And that comfortable, balanced position is going to show up in your breathing. So if your breath is strong, and that means your posture is comfortable. And then it says what's next is if you've got this comfortable position, then you have a chance to look internal. You have to look at the endless, which is the universe for which means chi, prana. You get to look at the prana that's inside your body. So it really comes from that. So don't try to be a circus performer. Try to achieve more. Do your best. Never push yourself too much, but always with the goal of getting better. And that's it. You just go. There's too many people who are really pushing too hard and maybe being pushed too hard. And it's a practice that's strong enough by itself. If you just do the vinyasa, do the breathing, do the movement, you're going to get super strong. And quite frankly, if you push too hard, you're actually going to hurt yourself and not advance as much. So have faith in the practice. It's a beautiful practice.
What a great end note. Thanks again. It's a pleasure to see you again. And
yes, it was a pleasure. Hope we meet in person sometime.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm going to avoid that like the plague.
No, don't avoid it. Don't avoid it.
Of course not. Of course not. No, I'd love to see you again.
Any comments? Appreciate it a lot.
I know I will. Any comments, please feel free to comment, guys, on it. And hook up with Darby. We'll put the address of your website is still, I assume, the same, Sattva, yeah? And
I don't think I have a website anymore.
You don't have a website anymore, right? Okay, so if you need to contact Darby, get hold of him on Facebook or get hold of me and I'll link you to Darby. So if you want to go study with him. Doing anything in Costa Rica these days?
I just did a small workshop last week and doing Zoom classes to Asia, and that's about it. Not much else, and just enjoying my, what I'm doing now is taking time off to enjoy life. I'm not, getting older. And since COVID, I just realised that, okay, I need to enjoy life a bit more. So I spent like 4 months here teaching.
Costa Rica. Why bloody not? Yeah, absolutely. And back to Montreal in the summer.
We have this beautiful place. So basically we're isolated from anybody. It's just jungle all the way around me. And so it's pretty nice.
Sounds good. All right. Well,
pleasure,
thanks again.
Pleasure, Adam.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Namaste.